For more resources, visit rymonline.org.
The Local Youth Worker is a daily podcast that's centered on 5 questions each week. Ranging from the practical to the professional, we're looking for answers to the questions you're asking. Whether you're in full-time, part-time, or even volunteer youth ministry, this podcast is for you.
All right, everybody, welcome back to our Friday show, talking to JonPaul Watson. JonPaul, thanks again for taking the time out this whole week.
Good to be here. I appreciate it, man.
To be here. Something we like to ask everybody is books that have been significant in your life. We want to encourage people to be lifelong students in ministry. Just in life in general, but we want to encourage people to be reading. And so one way we think is helpful is just being able to share other resources that have impacted us. So what are some books outside of the Bible that have impacted you? Those that are some of the most impactful books you've ever read, as well as some books that you're reading currently. They don't all have to be related to youth ministry, just in general.
I'll start with this is something I'm reading currently.
Okay.
As I was preparing to teach an elective class for RYM summer conference. The class I was teaching on is sort of like, well, what do we do when we feel bored reading the Bible? And so it got me to thinking a lot about the things that are in our lives that really compete for our allegiance, the allegiance of time in a lot of ways, and that we live in a culture that's really kind of bent towards self. And then in a lot of ways, technology is a good illustration of that. Now, I don't say that to say that technology's bad. I think technology is really, really good. But so it sent me on this quest, if you will, to look at, to try and think about some things that might be good that are out there. When it just so happens that I think it's Crossway published a book called 12 Ways Your Phone is Changing You by a guy named Tony Reinke, and it was just published, I think, within the last 6 months or so. And that's been really, really helpful for me. And you hear the title, and you could think, well, he's just going to toss our devices under the bus, kind of thing. Which, if you have children that are teenagers, you know that that's a good way to shut down the conversation immediately. But he doesn't. That's not his approach. And I found it to be really, really helpful. The way he sort of starts the book in thinking about a theology of technology, and that God is the one who's the author of technology, and that technology is something for us to steward, and to steward well. Not something for us to just dismiss and move out of the way, but how are we being good stewards of the technology that we hold in our hands, and particularly when you think about that it's changing all the time. How do we do that? That's been a really helpful book. For me, as I relate to my students as well too.
Absolutely. It's a very thoughtful book, and like you said, I think he even says in there how he's been an early adopter of technology all of his life, and so it definitely doesn't come across as bashing technology or anything like that. But it's one everyone would do well to read, because
I agree.
Obviously we all have these devices in our hands.
Right.
And also just kind of in light of that, kind of piggyback on what you just said, I know that he's done a podcast with Walt Mueller as well. Walt Mueller,
really?
Center for Parent, Center for Parent Youth Understanding, CPIU.org. For those of you listening, it's just I guess an hour and a half podcast, but the latter half is when he interviews Tony Reinke, so that's something people might want to check out. Yeah,
so that's something that has been been going on for me right now. Maybe bigger picture of things. One book that I read when I first came into youth ministry was a book called Hurt by a guy named Chap Clark. And that book has been really, really helpful for me sort of getting into the culture that is youth culture of today. And trying to understand where students are coming from, the things that they're struggling with, the things that they're going through on a day-to-day basis and everything, and how they might respond to the church in the midst of that as well too. That one, if you're going into youth ministry, you're thinking about going into youth ministry, that would be a really good book to read. And it's dense. I mean, it's pretty hefty, but it's totally worth it. And it will really get you into the mindset of what your students are going through on a daily basis. That when they dawn the doors of their high schools, that they feel like their life is on the line every single day. And that's real, and that's true, and that's their experience. That was really, really helpful for me.
Yeah, and not to put you on the spot, I read Hurt, but I know Hurt 2.0.
Well, I'm talking about Hurt 2.0, actually.
Oh, that's one, okay.
So that's what I'm talking about. Not the original. His 2.0 version is the one.
So is that a revision of the original?
I think it's added to, like he just added some stuff to it in terms of like what he had continued to experience that he thought might be helpful to it. So yeah.
That's a good one.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. Like you said, eye-opening, and will help you understand your students a little bit better.
Yeah.
So any other books you want to add?
Yeah. So I've got some books that I would say that I probably come back to at least once a year. One of those books is a book called In the Name of Jesus: Reflections on Christian Leadership by a guy named Henry Nouwen. A really short book. If I'm not mistaken, I think it's less than 100 pages. But let me tell you, in less than 100 pages, that book right there consistently knocks me down in a good way in understanding how Jesus leads us in serving us, and that He calls us to die to self as we serve others out of our identity in Jesus, not to try and earn some sort of identity in Jesus, but out of our identity in Jesus to serve others and to have that posture towards the people that you're ministering to. In a lot of ways, having confidence in the fact that God's at work, and feeling free to serve others. That it's not, I don't have to try and bolster myself. I don't have to, it's not about me. And as soon as I start making it about me, then destruction happens because that's my sin getting in the way. That one's one that I read on a yearly basis for sure, and continue to come back to.
Say that again, by Henry Nouwen.
It's called In the Name of Jesus: Reflections on Christian Leadership by Henry Nouwen. That would be one, and this is maybe that one, and the other one that I'll mention is maybe more of the like just kind of pastoral side of things. The other one that I would say has been really, really impactful is The Institutes of Christian Religion by John Calvin. And now I am not someone who sits down and reads theology for 2 or 3 hours a day. We read this actually as a pastoral staff together, and it was extremely profitable. And we got together once a week to discuss the reading that we had done, small chunks because it's really, really dense stuff. But over the course of a year, we read through the institutes together, and there is so much good stuff in there that Calvin writes about. Just even his premise of knowing God and knowing self is the foundation of the Christian religion, and that you can't properly know one without the other. It's just really, really helpful foundationally, and so pastoral too. In the way that he writes, once you can kind of get into it. And I'm a big proponent of reading books in groups. For me, that's been really, really helpful. It's tough for me to get driven behind just reading all the time. I'm a person who wants to be with people and hang out with people. That's not to say people that enjoy books don't want to be with people. But if given the choice between the two, I'm going to run towards being with people. So reading a book in groups together has been really, really helpful. And discussing it. That's the thing that's been very, very helpful to me. And we try to read, as a pastoral staff, we read through something at least every year, at least one big chunk of
That's
things,
good.
and maybe even a couple of books together. So.
And just kind of a practical follow-up question to that. Did you have some kind of a guide reading through that? I know that there's some reading schedules online of reading through the institutes.
Right. Yeah. So we basically had our pastoral secretary create a schedule for us that was basically sort of based on, if I remember correctly, roughly like 8 pages a week, 8 pages of stuff a week, and maybe it was more than that at times. But it is one of those things, like with the institutes, that it's so dense that there's so much that's there that, to really kind of get into it and get through it, it's going to be a slow.
So 8 pages a week?
Yeah, if I remember correctly. I could be wrong on that.
Okay, yeah.
It could be more like 20. But I do remember this. What I do remember is it was small chunks. Like we had designed it so that we would read small chunks at a time and think on those things instead of just pushing ourselves to fastly go through it, rather to try and practice some of the Lord, sort of like reflecting and resting in what we were reading. And so we specifically designed it to do that, to accommodate that.
That's smart because it's definitely not a book you just want to fly through. And I'm unable to fly through a book like that. I've got to
Right, same here. I read really slow. I need people to help me understand what I'm reading. I mean, that's just how I am.
Yeah.
So.
Well, that's good. I mean, obviously, if you're mentioning the institutes in a list of books, that one's going to be up there. So it's a good one to throw out. Any other books you want to throw out? Any that you want to add?
I would say another one on the pastoral side that we've read through together as a pastoral staff too is a book called Sensing Jesus by Zach S. Wine. And I think that maybe it's been republished into The Imperfect Pastor.
That's right.
But that has been so helpful for us as a pastoral team. In thinking about ministry together. So one of the things that we really are striving towards at Christ Pres is for our pastoral staff to be a team thinking about the ministries of the church together. So we are kind of in each other's business in a good way, in so many ways. We do sermon prep together each week. Our other associate pastor who's over Christian Ed and small groups, like we are constantly talking about stuff. As a matter of fact, the two of us are going to co-teach a class this fall on technology and theology that we're going to offer to our church as a whole. It's going to be the only thing that we're going to have our students be involved in because we think it's really, really important. So Sensing Jesus really kind of helped us think through some of that stuff and thinking about pastoral ministry just in a broad sense of thinking how, well, if it's really true that God's at work and God's using everything to build us up into the image of Christ, that means that our ministries in our church shouldn't be these distinct things apart from each other, but rather we should be thinking about how all of this fits together for our people. And Sensing Jesus really, I feel like, really helped us in a lot of that pastorally as we read through that together. It was interesting because it wasn't necessarily anything particular about the content in that book that was saying you need to do this or you need to do this, as much as it was just the pastoral tone with which S. Wine writes that made us all think about pastoral ministry and how all of our ministries fit together. So it's maybe even tough for me to explain, but that one's been really huge for me, and I would say for our pastoral staff as well too.
Yeah, that was one that I appreciated, and I do know you're right that maybe a few years ago, the Imperfect Pastor, I think he might have added some additional chapters to that and revised it, but basically the same one. But that's one that you'll want to read periodically for sure.
Absolutely, yeah.
Well, JonPaul, again, thank you so much for taking the time this week. It's been great having you on the show.
Thanks for having me, John.
Absolutely. Thanks so much for tuning in this week to the Local Youth Worker. As always, we hope you've been encouraged and equipped in your call as youth workers. If you take time to rate this podcast on iTunes, it would greatly help us. As always, we want to thank Joe Deegan for providing the music and encourage you to go out and purchase his newest CD, Cover and Title Page, which you can find at iTunes. See you guys next week. Have a great weekend.
Oh, come and buy without money. Oh, come and feast without pay. For the King has opened podcast.